Oh my gosh, you guys, last night we got to see E. Jean Carroll.
Everything's changed since, the election. And we are in the fight right now.
Hey everyone, we're at the super cool gala for the Crime Victims Treatment Center. Yeah, we get to see all these badass survivors of sexual assault who have become amazing advocates.
Every day, here's something that nobody knows. Every day for the last 5 years, as we prepared for trial, I wore a flight suit. Every single day.
And actually, E. Jean Carroll is in the headlines again because the Department of Justice is trying to step in on Trump's behalf in the appeal of her defamation case.
And so if you remember last year, a New York jury actually ordered Trump to pay a total of $83.3 million to Carroll for ruining her credibility as an advice columnist after he called her a liar when she accused him of sexual assault.
Technically, he called her allegations a hoax and a lie and said she was not my type.
Nice. And Trump's argument is basically that the presidential immunity that he's granted through the Supreme Court should extend to these lawsuits and prevent him from having to pay any damages at all. And Trump is now claiming that he acted in an official capacity when he made those comments about her.
How was disparaging her reputation and appearance acting in an official capacity as president?
Right. And this is actually the second time that the Justice Department has intervened and tried to put an end to this case. So former Attorney General Bill Barr actually blocked the lawsuit in 2020. So the suit was stuck in court for years until 2023 when Biden's Justice Department came in and kind of allowed this suit to move forward.
Trump's team is also trying to use this Supreme Court immunity to wiggle out of the assault case. So this is a separate case from the defamation case. She also sued him in civil court for raping her in Bergdorf Goodman in 1996. And the jury found him guilty of a lesser charge of sexual abuse and ordered him to pay $5 million.
And if you're wondering how Carroll was even able to sue Trump 26 years after this incident, it was under the New York Adult Survivors Act, which eliminated the civil statute of limitations for survivors of sexual assault who were over 18. And before this, victims could only sue their perpetrators within a couple years of their attack, which isn't always enough time to process what happened.
So this 1 year look back was really New York's way of recognizing that in this post-Me Too world, we are much more accepting and believing of survivors than we might have been decades ago when the environment might have been more intimidating and traumatic for victims to speak out.
And actually, before this law was signed, in 2019, then Governor Cuomo actually passed a different law that increased the statute of limitations to 20 years. But everyone was kind of just 20 years from 2019 is just so arbitrary. What about the women who experienced sexual assault before then? Why don't they get the opportunity to kind of come forward? So that's how the Adult Survivors Act came into the picture and became such a big deal. It gave survivors this 1 year window from November 2022 to November 2023 to come forward.
And almost 4,000 legal claims were filed within this window, including a ton of high profile cases, like Cassie accused P. Diddy of assault, that was under the ASA, as well as accusations against Jamie Foxx, Bill Cosby, Russell Brand, Rudy Giuliani, and Andrew Cuomo.
And actually, one of the women who helped get this legislation on the governor's desk was Evelyn Yang, who was also honored at the event last night.
It's pretty clear that it's pretty awful out there. All of the chaos and the brutality is really paralyzing. And I think tonight is about realizing that we need to fight. And also that survivors are powerful.
Evelyn is actually married to Andrew Yang, who we all know from the 2020 election, and she has a harrowing story. She was assaulted while she was pregnant by her gynecologist at Columbia University, who is accused of abusing over 1,000 women, to whom the school is now going to pay over $1 billion. And it was just so inspiring to see these women turn their pain into progress.
It really was. It was such an honor to be there. But even the most well-meaning of us experience this Me Too fatigue. It's this dialogue that we've been having since 2017. But this issue is not going away. According to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, an American is sexually assaulted every 68 seconds.
It's literally unimaginable. And something that surprised us is that 80% of women and 40% of men are victims of sexual assault and harassment in their lives. So I didn't realize almost half of men are also victims. Of course, women still account for the vast majority of assaults, but still.
And something that the Me Too movement really helped bring to life wasn't just the prevalence of sexual assault, but how impossibly difficult it is to live in the aftermath. So 94% of women who are raped experience PTSD symptoms that sometimes follow women around their whole lives.
Well, this is heartbreakingly timely because just last week, Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent victim, Virginia Giuffre, took her own life. And she spoke a lot about struggling with PTSD and anxiety and depression and being robbed of self-worth and identity. Her family's statement said the toll of the abuse is so heavy that it became unbearable for Virginia to handle its weight.
And Wren and I were actually writing this story when that news broke, and it sent chills down our spines just because of how urgent this conversation is, because all these names of high-profile men that were kind of circulating in the headlines during the start of the Me Too movement are back again. So Trump, Epstein, and of course Harvey Weinstein, whose retrial in New York just started. So testimony began last week, and the retrial is expected to go on for 6 weeks.
Yeah, so in case you aren't caught up, last year the New York Supreme Court overturned his previous conviction of sex crimes, ruling that he had been deprived of a fair trial in 2020 when prosecutors were allowed to call witnesses whose accusations were not backed by physical evidence and weren't a part of the lawsuit itself. So this one only has 3 accusers.
Right, so they're going to retry Weinstein on 2 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of rape. And he's 72 now. He's faced severe health complications like cancer and diabetes in recent years. So he was actually pulled out of prison at Rikers Island and is staying at Bellevue Hospital. And even though his 23-year New York sentence is overturned for now, the one that we're talking about, he's remaining in custody for his other sentence in California, where he's sentenced to 16 years after being found guilty of rape.
It's just wild to think that Harvey Weinstein, who's basically synonymous with the Me Too or Time's Up movements, is back at the innocent until proven guilty phase, at least in New York. It's almost a test to see how much has really changed over the years.
And reporting has indicated that this is going to be a very different trial than last time. From the expressions on the jurors' faces that are apparently a lot more like composed and skeptical than aghast like last time, to Weinstein's attorneys who have said, quote, the mob mentality that was so pronounced at his first trial has subsided. He's going to have the trial that he should have had all along. So it's clear that a lot has changed in the world since the beginnings of the Me Too era, which was almost a decade ago. Even his legal team is betting that the effects of the movement are fading.
But since Me Too became part of the national conversation, there have been lasting impacts. Like more than 80 anti-harassment bills were passed by 25 states and the District of Columbia.
And under Biden, Congress actually passed a ban on forced arbitration in sexual assault cases. So it basically prohibits employers from forcing workers to settle sexual misconduct claims behind closed doors, which favors the perpetrator. So employees can instead sue in court with their own legal representation.
Biden also signed a law that curbed the use of NDAs to block victims of sexual harassment from speaking publicly about it. So basically, if you sign an NDA before the sexual abuse occurs, you are not bound to it. You can still speak out without repercussion.
And it's not just legislation. So companies like Google, Airbnb, eBay, and Time Warner have created more secure workplaces and implemented anti-harassment procedures. Uber and Lyft started releasing safety transparency reports. So the safety is something the corporate world is seemingly prioritizing.
But as the survivors last night said, the social climate is changing with Trump back in office. Now he controls the Justice Department, and we've seen big companies change their policies to appease him. So is the Me Too era really here to stay, or will the progress that we made be reversed?
When a woman gets knocked down, it's not about being knocked down. It's about how she stands back up.